There, turn off the sound. There, now you can hear us. Sorry about that. Anyway,
Good
how are you,
evening.
Janine? Good evening. And we're here, and we're going to talk about some things that you're going to need for when it all hits the fan. So we are going to do that. And we're going to start with something you've heard in the news, possibly, about, certain individuals in our... I'm trying to avoid some words, okay? So certain individuals, very, very young individuals in our society that may not have what they need, some special dietary needs. For example, this is what they suggested back in the 60s for such a thing. And we're just going to call this, just for argument's sake, we're going to call this the formula. So here is the formula. So please disregard this dangerously viral Facebook post advising the use of homemade such and such. So that particular recipe is dangerous because, as Jody pointed out to me, it's nothing but a bunch of sugar. Like, Jody, you tell us what we're seeing here.
Well, evaporated milk. I mean, I'm sure back in the day it was probably some pretty good ingredients in the 60s. But evaporated milk, we know, is, full of sugar. We also know that Karo is corn syrup. So 2 tablespoons of corn syrup. And then, it makes a few bottles here and there. I mean, it actually may not be as bad for you as the formula today.
But it's just a bunch of sugar.
It's just a bunch of sugar.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, if you go online and you look up recipes for this formula, you will find recipe after recipe after recipe from the 60s and 70s, and they all want to include this Karo, which is corn syrup.
Now, here's something better that you can do. This comes from where I used to work, the Hallelujah Diet. If a mother was not able to provide natural food for the younger individual, they would suggest the formula. Here is the formula.
And this was done and kind of put together by your scientist that was on staff?
Yes. Yep. So this is all verified, good for the younger individual. 1/3 raw goat's milk, 1/3 organic carrot or celery juice. We'll get into the reasons why for that in a second. And 1/3 distilled water. So equal parts of each 3 of those. So why the goat milk? Well, the goat milk has all kinds of nutrients that are very similar to mother's milk. Celery juice, why would you do that? It provides essential folate that is missing from said goat milk. And then distilled water just dilutes it a little bit. And you would reduce that with age. And pretty soon you could go with just half and half of the goat's milk and the carrot juice. And that was what was often not prescribed, but recommended for older individuals of this age. And here's some things you could put in there to even make it even closer to mother's milk. Pure Encapsulations brand probiotic 123. It was suggested that they put a quarter scoop in there. DHA infant, you add that per body weight. And Pure Encapsulations B12 folate. And what you do is open the capsule and just put a little bit of pinch of the powder in for the amount of the formula that you are making per day. And so as things get tighter, and right now this particular thing is not available in the stores at all, this is a good suggestion.
And some other things that I was reading about today were talking about, a bunch of different recipes, a bunch of different things that you can put in there that are not harmful at all to the young person. And those are things like coconut oil and any kind of, good oils, good fats, because babies and young infants need fats. Mm-hmm. You can't hardly not say that word.
We tried. We failed. That's okay. All right. So that was that one. Now, the next thing you'd want to have, just in case of emergency, and this is something that is on our list on Amazon right now. It's one of these, a power inverter. What is a power inverter and why would you want one? Well, I'm going to show you something special about my car, but something you can do with any car is, how you've seen on the Ford commercials when they have their new F-150 Lightning electric truck that is coming out soon, apparently. I'm not sure exactly when, but they're one of their big features for this vehicle is that you can power your house with it. If the power goes out, you just plug in stuff into the back of the truck and, oh, wow, you can do that. Did you know you can do that with your own car right now? You can. You get what's called a power inverter. And it looks just like, let's see, I'm going to show you a picture of one. There. Here it is, right here. That is a power inverter. You see it has two outlets. If you look at the little picture from Amazon on the right side there, you have two outlets for power. And you have even some USB ports, that kind of thing. And this one in particular can handle 1,500 watts, you see there, printed on top of the unit. And that means it can handle 1,500 watts at a time. So just to give you an example, our refrigerator and our big chest freezer can be both plugged in there at the same time and not blow the thing. And so what happens is, what you attach this to your car's battery and start the engine. So basically, your vehicle becomes a generator.
That's providing we have gas.
Providing we have gas, yes.
And diesel.
Yeah, which is another problem lately, right? I'm sure you've heard about that one.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing about my car. So my car is a Prius, a 2004 Prius. It's an older Prius, but the interesting thing about this is that the Prius does not have an alternator. An alternator is what turns when the engine goes to charge the battery. So what happens is with the Prius, the engine charges the battery bank. Now, this is the battery, the hybrid batteries, all the huge batteries that are underneath the passenger seats in the back of the car.
Right.
So that's what powers the car. That's not like a regular battery like you have in your car. So, but those big batteries also power a smaller battery that is like the one you have in your car. And it's just like in every other car. And that's what powers the lights and the windshield wipers in your car and all that kind of thing. So same thing as you would do with a regular car. You take this power inverter and you would connect it with some very thick wires. You get what's called zero gauge wires, very thick, very short wires, because the longer the wire, power is lost along the distance. So you get the shortest possible. So I'm going to get ones that are like 1 foot or maybe 6 inches long. And I'm going to put this power inverter right beside my battery, which is in the back of the Prius. There's another interesting thing. So the battery is in the back of the Prius. And so the interesting thing about the Prius is you plug this in, but unlike a regular car that you would have to run all the time in order to charge the battery and the alternator and all that kind of stuff so that you could have power in your house, which would still work, the Prius only has to, it automatically turns on the car and turns it off just enough to keep the big battery bank powered, which then powers the small battery. So what happens here, you can see that this becomes a very efficient generator. So as you have things plugged into the inverter, obviously that's going to cause a draw on the battery. So the Prius starts up, runs for about 30 seconds, and then shuts down for about another 5 minutes. And you can just leave it on in the driveway and just let it do its thing. And you don't have to be in it. And so you can imagine.
Get yourself a Prius.
You get yourself a Prius,
and then get
real cheap one that
Yeah.
just barely runs, as long as the battery bank's good. And so basically people have used a Prius to power a house, or at least, essential things in a house that can handle about 1,100 watts for the little battery in the Prius, the little car battery. And that's about as high as you want to go, about 1,100, 1,200 watts. But they've used that for an entire week on one tank of gas. And a tank of gas in a Prius is only 10 gallons. That's it. So 10 gallons for a whole week of power when you've got a Prius. So that is really interesting. And here's how this thing works. So check this out. So first of all, let's see. Okay, here's the drawing of how it all works. So there you see this guy's installing this in his Prius. So he's got a gas engine, goes to the power goes to the hybrid battery. The power from the hybrid battery goes to the little 12-volt battery that I was talking about that powers your windshield washers, windshield wipers and such. And that goes into the power inverter, and that from the power inverter you go into your electronics or your refrigerator, or I found online a nice 500-watt space heater. So you could even stay warm in winter and run a fridge at the same time, which is really cool. And then what you do is, okay, well, here's how you hook it up. So this is the back of the Prius. On the right-hand side here, you're seeing the back right of the Prius. The bumper is right underneath the guy's wrist here. And so that power inverter is plugged into the little battery. And then you'd plug stuff in from there. And here's just kind of a close-up of what he's doing. So he's hooking up those two wires to the battery. And of course, you'd want to follow all safety guidelines to do this so you don't hurt yourself or shock yourself. And it's as simple as that. So that's a
So
really cool thing.
we could do a dry run in the fall for when we go camping for a week
Yeah.
during the festival called Sukkot.
Yeah, and in fact, speaking of camping, there's a guy online. If you look him up, just say Prius or camping in a Prius. This guy lives out of his Prius, but not because he's destitute, because he wants to, and to prove a point. So he's got a little, what do you call those things? We got our daughter one for college. It's a little pot.
An Instapot?
Instapot. No, not Instapot. It was something else. It was a.
Neti pot?
Yeah, yes. Anyway.
No, it was an Instapot.
Well, yeah, it had a different name, but it was yeah. So an Instapot. He has a microwave in there. He's got a heater, and it's a beautiful thing. He's even got his TV in there and stuff. He powers it all off his Prius, and he just keeps it running all night because he's got windows open and that kind of stuff. So he's not going to get carbon monoxide or anything. And he lives in his Prius.
Wow. And
it's really weird. So anyway, enough about that. Now, another thing you want to have on hand is black cumin seed. Why do you want to have black cumin seed? You may have noticed that during the pandemic, that folks were using black cumin seed if they could not get their hands on something else, namely this stuff. I have blocked out. We are not going to say the word, but you know what we're talking about. If you are not able to get that word that starts with an Ivor, you could get black cumin seed.
right.
And is it the same thing? Well, read that headline. Is black cumin seed as good as Ivor to prevent and treat Yes, it is. So says the Frontline COVID Critical Care Association. That was the website we were using when folks called us for our suggestions as to what we would do if they were in their position, and we would always refer to them if they had the disease. They would go there, and we said follow their advice. So these guys that we were taking advice from are saying that very thing. So how about that?
Yep.
Amazing.
Just to add to the inverter, we think of food and that kind of thing, but other people, we had just had a comment online, some people have to power other things like a CPAP. So,
extremely important. Yes.
right? So,
And a CPAP is not 1,000 watts.
yeah,
You can easily
you
power
could do
that.
your fridge and your freezer and the CPAP, I'm sure, but you might have to sleep in the Prius, but I guess you can do that.
You could do that, yep. And all you got to do is run a cord, so you get a big thick cord to run from the vehicle, whatever vehicle you have, into your house, and then you get one of the ends on it that has 3 or 4 things on the end of it, and you just plug all your stuff into that one cord, and you plug that into the Prius. And again, some of these things have 2 or 3 USB ports in it to charge your phone or your laptop or whatever else, so you can do that. And and some of the good ones, the one that I have picked out on Amazon, has 3 outlets on it. 3 outlets and 2 USB ports.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, you get
yeah.
excited sort of talking about this because you're planning things, but at the same time, then you think about
Actually using
all
it.
the news that you
Having
listen
to
to
use it.
today. So I was at the gym working out, and I really don't watch CNN or Fox ever. Can I say that on the air?
Yes.
Okay.
We hate Fox and CNN. There. Okay.
I really don't watch them, but when I do go to the gym, I have my headphones on and I'm listening to something else, some other newsworthy news. But I do glance up every once in a while to see what the headlines are. And today it was all about the formula, which was about 2 days late, mind you, if you're watching
Right.
other news sources. Like I was reading today on Fox what I read 2 days ago online. And some other things were going on. Oh, I know. Today they started talking about the plant that got shut down, and of course the diesel shortage is coming, which
Yep.
we did read again 2 days ago.
Yep.
So it's almost like they're seeing the news, waiting a couple days, and then talking about it 2 days later.
right?
I don't know.
It's not mainstream news. It's molasses stream news. Is
And I
what
mean,
it is.
Dan Bongino is on Fox, so
Yeah, folks like that. But it's weird.
we listen to him, but not on
And
Fox.
see, I think we've said that before, that if you're a believer and you're listening to things that are believer focused, you're going to be ahead of the game. You're going to know before everyone else. And that's the way I'm convinced God is going to protect us. Like he did with
One
the
step
Israelites
ahead.
in Goshen. You're going to know. You're going to be preparing. Everybody's going to look at you going, what are you doing? You're nuts. And you're going, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And that you'll know the truth before anybody else does. That's how it's going to work,
You know
I think,
who
and
is-
that's why we
yeah.
have nothing to worry about.
You know who was really good today? Dan Bongino was really good today, and Mike Adams.
Mike Adams. Oh yeah.
Really good today, all about.
Now, where do we
the
find Mike
food-
Adams? He's at Health Ranger.
Yeah, Health Ranger on Rumble.
Okay.
And he was talking all about the food issues today and the baby issues. And then Bongino was more talking political. So you get your political and you get
I
your
got you.
kind of natural stuff.
Now, here's something that you wouldn't think that maybe us two would be into. Wheat berries. What are wheat berries, and why the heck are we having them? Aren't you guys gluten free? Isn't wheat bad for you? Okay, listen. I've had my mind changed a little bit.
I haven't yet.
Jody hasn't yet. It's still, the jury's still out on it. But anyway, we had a guest in the studios at A Rude Awakening named Sue Becker. Sue Becker formed a company with her husband called the Bread Beckers because she is a nutritionist and she's a biochemist. And she realized that there's nothing really wrong with bread if we do it right. So she says. She says in the modern day, we're doing everything wrong, long story short, because we're making flour first and then putting it in a
storing
bag
it.
and storing it, and then
Yeah.
we use it. And that whole process creates a problem. Gluten and all the rest of it. She says if you take the wheat berries, which is basically the kernels of wheat, and you only grind what you need on the spot, and there's little, tabletop grinders that are only, this big, not big at all.
Well, we have a hand grinder.
We have a hand grinder too, just in case the power
Just in
goes out.
case.
So, and we have both actually. We have an electric one and a hand grinder, and we haven't touched either one of them in years, just to be honest. So, she says if you grind only what you need for the recipe you're doing right there on the spot, and then immediately make it and put it in the oven, no gluten problems, no issues at all. It's just that we're making it wrong. We've been making it wrong since the Industrial Revolution, So she says if you just, buy a grain grinder and do it like that, it'll work. So, in an emergency, wheat is great to have. It really is, because there's all kinds of nutrients in it. There's all kinds of probiotics, all kinds of things, and they're all sealed up in the kernel of wheat. And it doesn't go bad if you keep it dry, if you keep oxygen away for it. And by the way, if you buy the wheat from her company, which is this right here, that is our bucket right there. That is our 6-gallon bucket of wheat berries right there. And I took a picture of it just to show you that we have it. And if you buy hers, what they do is they actually treat it with carbon dioxide, which means it takes all the oxygen out of that bucket and kills any kind of bugs that are in there or anything like that, and basically preserves it. It'll be there for years, hundreds of years. I mean, they found, properly stored wheat berries in Egyptian tombs that still sprout, that still grow. So, I mean, this is a really good emergency food to have.
Yep. And the jury's still out because you're still going to, okay, if worse comes to worse and you need
You're not gonna care about
energy and
gluten at that point.
and lots of carbs, but I guess if worse comes to worse at that time, I will eat it. But right now, not
Yeah.
so much. So tell us, that is a how many pound bucket?
That is 42 pounds in that 6-gallon bucket.
6-gallon bucket.
Yep.
And how much was it?
It was, including shipping, because it's very heavy. You can imagine the shipping is, just as
Yeah.
much as the wheat berries are themselves. It was close to, what did we say, $100?
I have no
Something like
idea.
that. Yeah, something like that. But anyway, you can join a co-op, though. If you go to breadbeckers.com, and I'm sorry I don't have a lower third here for that, but go to breadbeckers, BECKERS.com. They have co-ops near you. They actually have one here in Charlotte where you can sign up to that, and basically everybody gets together and says, yep, I want 5 buckets, I want this many buckets, da-da-da-da. And then once a month or so, there's a big shipment that comes. Everybody goes to a central location and picks it up. And so that's what we can do next time. And that saves on shipping. That's the reason you want to do that.
Right.
We had it delivered right to our door. And of course, the UPS cost was like $50 just to get it here. So anyway, that's why we have wheat berries. And according to Sue Becker, I mean, even after you open that bucket, it's still good, because she says the carbon dioxide has done its job. It's killed everything off, and now you're good. As long as you keep it dry, it's going to stay there for for longer than we're all going to be alive. So great food to have on hand in case of an emergency.
Right.
All right. So the next thing we want to talk to you about is organic coconut oil. Jody, you mentioned this one. Why?
Well, I just think that oil of any kind is going to be good for you. Oil of any kind is going to be great to have on hand. I mean, coconut oil is good for a lot of things. Obviously, moisturizer, you can eat it and you can cook with it. So it's got a lot of uses. And here's the thing, I don't know if you want to talk about this right now, but I heard from somebody today who was talking about, if things go bad, how are you going to eat? And are you going to eat 3 meals a day? Well, you're not going to want to get up and have breakfast. You're going to want to learn how to do intermittent fasting. You're going to want to learn to use oil, as in coconut oil, and fats as fuel, because it's going to sustain you for a lot longer. Now, this is kind of how we, or I at least, live our lives right now. And you, for the most part, I don't eat until noon. Well, sometimes you get, I mean, you do a little bit more carbs. You like your
for sure.
apples and that kind of thing. I don't eat until noon. Neither do you.
11:30. Sure.
Yeah, so we learn to use oils as our fuels. And so this person I heard talking today said, really, you should try to not eat until, later on in the afternoon if things go weird. And then you have your one big meal of the day, and then for the rest of the day, you're fasting
What
again.
they call OMAD, 1 meal a day.
Right. And so that makes a lot of sense, because you're already going to have energy in the morning from, the night before. You're going to be kind of in ketosis. You can have a spoon. This sounds ridiculous, but you can have a spoonful of coconut oil here and there, which will get you through till you're 3 or 4 o'clock. Then you have your meal, and then you fast again until the next day. So first of all, you're saving food. Second of all, you're saving energy. And when you're in ketosis, you have just as much energy, if not more, than you do when you're eating carbs.
And this is the concept behind MREs, the military meals, which, by the way, are in short supply and you can't find them. Why? Because the government's buying them all up. Why is the government buying it all up? Good question. Do they know something you don't? Think about that.
We heard that from a very good source today, that the government is actually going to the MRE people, or the people who do food. What do you call that? Food,
Like storable food?
Storable, and are having government contracts to buy quite a bit of it.
Yep. And if you don't accept our government contract, there might be problems for you. So it's almost like a mafia situation. Terrible. Anyway, but MREs, the whole point behind that is that they are 3,000 or 4,000 calories. Why? Because a soldier may not get an opportunity to eat for a couple of days because he's under attack and he's got to stay alert. No time to eat, man. He's just got to go or stay huddled down or whatever. So that's why MREs are 3,000 to 4,000 calories.
I wonder if it's 3,000 to 4,000 calories with lots of carbs or lots of oils.
I think it's just
Probably carbs.
carbs. Yeah. Well, I can't say so. I don't know. I'd have to look into it anyway. But anyway, so having coconut oil on hand. I mean, I was just saying to Jody, when you go to Walmart and you get their organic coconut oil, which is just as good as any other coconut oil, organic coconut oil, it's like $12, $13. Yes. Get a ton of it. It's shelf stable. It is a saturated fat. Why? What is it saturated with? Real quick, it is the molecular structure of a saturated fat, which is typically solid at room temperature. So you're talking about your beef tallow, your organic coconut oil, your grass-fed butter. If you eat pork products, lard, we don't, but that's another one. Those are all solid at room temperature. Yeah. So that is typically how you can tell if it's saturated. What is it saturated with? Hydrogen. The molecular structure is saturated with hydrogen. If something is unsaturated, like something liquid like olive oil or avocado oil, that has one or more spaces in its molecular structure for hydrogen to move in. Monounsaturated has one opportunity. Polyunsaturated has several opportunities for hydrogen to move in. The problem is oxygen can also move into those spaces in the molecular structure. And then we have what we call rancidity. As you can tell, coconut oil, if it's saturated, has very little opportunity, if at all, for oxygen to move in and oxidation to happen. So it's going to stay shelf stable for a long time.
Yeah.
Good thing to have.
I have had rancid coconut oil before, and it is not good. So it does go rancid.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, I mentioned moisturizer, I mentioned cooking, I mentioned fueling your body, but I didn't mention your brain. To keep your brain in tip-top shape with things to come.
Yep.
A spoonful of coconut oil a day helps with your brain fog because your brain's 65% fat. You need that fat for your brain.
And you can imagine that if it's all hitting the fan, you're going to have to think pretty clearly and think pretty cleverly. You don't want to be just stuck on sugar and not thinking correctly. All right. So another thing we can talk about is oregano oil and colloidal silver. Why would you want to have these on hand? Okay. These handle your viral and bacterial assaults against you. So any kind of virus that comes your way or any kind of bacterial infection. So the colloidal silver handles the bacteria. The oregano oil handles the viral. Oregano oil, if you ever take it straight, is like, I say it's like a whiskey shot. Oh my gosh, that stuff burns. But what we do is if we're getting an ailment of some kind and we're not sure whether it's bacterial or viral, because even a doctor can't really tell, we do it both. So what we do is we get basically a half an ounce of colloidal silver, which looks just like water essentially. And then a good brand is Silver Biotics. Some other people make their own, but
Argentin 23.
Yeah, Argentin, that's the best. Yeah, Argentin 23. These companies can make nano silver, which is a lot smaller particle than you can make at home, making your own colloidal silver. So the colloidal silver with about 20, 30 drops of the oregano oil. You mix that all together, swirl it around, literally in a shot glass. That's what we do, and whoop, down it. Now you're protected from both viral and bacterial. And I can't tell you how many times that if you start to recognize you're getting symptoms, if you catch it right then and start doing this, you'll knock it out in less than a day.
And you do have to be careful with it. I have burnt my vocal cords before.
Yeah, that's pretty strong stuff.
It is.
All right, something else you want to have is dehydrated eggs. Well, where am I going to find dehydrated eggs? Well, first of all, you get yourself a chicken. Get them to lay some eggs. Get her to lay some eggs, and then what you do is you can either number one, you can mix them up, like scramble them, either raw or you can scramble them cooked. You can do either way. I've seen both online, and what you do is get a dehydrator. We have a dehydrator. I would highly recommend it. It's very cheap for the amount of stuff you can do with a dehydrator.
Right.
Highly recommended. It's called an Excalibur, Excalibur dehydrator. We have the one that has 10 trays. It's about a foot by a foot. It's a big bulky thing, but it has 10 trays in there, and it just basically has a heater and a fan, and it just sits there and dehydrates things all day long. So what do you do with dehydrated eggs? You make the eggs. You either cook them or not, and then you put them on the trays. They're in the dehydrator, 150 degrees, not enough to cook it, especially if it's the raw stuff, for about 6 to 12 hours. After that, you're going to get some very crispy, eggy type of things.
Yep.
Put them in a blender or a food processor, make it into powder, and put it in a vacuum sealed bag. Done. You've got some food that's good for years. I just read online before we started this, a guy who did just that with the raw kind and then rehydrated and cooked them. He says it kind of tasted a little bland. Of course it would. He says, but it was just fine. It didn't taste bad. And the eggs were 3 years old.
Yeah, and here's the thing about that. That's your protein. So 1 tablespoon is probably 1 egg. 2 is probably 2 eggs. And so if you can do that and get prepared for that, you're going to have some good protein. And you can add that to other things. So if you have rice and you make rice, you add your eggs to your rice.
Yeah,
and,
very good.
Mix it in and
Yep. Now, this is another thing we talked about, recipe ingredients.
Yeah.
And to Jody's point, she watched something today, was it today, where somebody said that you don't want to have this huge 40-ounce can of beans that you open up, and then what are you going to do?
Yeah, or green beans, and then you have to eat green beans for 10 days so as to not have them go bad. You don't want to do that, so you want to buy smaller quantities.
Right. Yeah, smaller amounts, but yeah, just pile up on them. So
not really a lot of canned food. I mean, canned food stays good for a while, but not forever.
And one canned food you don't want to have is canned tomatoes or tomato sauce or anything like that. Why? We experienced this personally. We stored it for 3-4 years, something like that.
Yep.
Went in to check on it, and what happened was that the acid in the tomatoes had eaten its way through the can, created mold, exploded, mold everywhere. It was a big mess. So you don't want to do that.
And we didn't know what happened because it was buried under a few different boxes of things.
Right. Yeah. So don't do that. Don't get stored tomato anything. Get stuff that's less acidic. But you want to have recipe ingredients, and the reason why I talk about this is because you're not rather than spend a whole lot of money on these ready-made meals. Like I saw one in Costco the other day. It was a week's worth of food. for one person for $70. You're going to spend $70 on this bucket of food that's all these special, ingredients and everything, and you're good for a week,
Yeah, right.
and then you're destitute again?
So
No.
times 4 weeks in a month times 4 people in your family.
Yeah,
That's
it gets
pretty
pricey.
expensive. Yeah.
So get ingredients instead and make stuff. And then, so think about it this way. Think around it. So maybe you want to get a microwave that's under 1,000 watts that maybe you can power with your inverter, and make cakes that you can put in the microwave's not not perfect obviously, but put them in the microwave and power it with your car, that kind of stuff. Or make a solar oven, online on YouTube, all kinds of ideas on how to make a solar oven, these type of things, so you can keep the cost down and still collect stuff just in case.
I think dehydrating is the way to go.
I think so too.
I mean, the amount of kale people get from their gardens, you can dehydrate kale all day long and make it into a powder.
Yep.
And then rehydrate it.
And put it into your eggs that
and
you're
put
making.
it into
your
your
powdered
eggs and your
right?
rice, and it's going to be. Yes, you're just going to want to eat to get the calories and stuff, but you're also going to want to get nutrient dense foods to keep yourself healthy.
And one thing we didn't put in this list, but I'm just thinking of now, and I wish I would have, is a vacuum sealer. That's really handy. I saw a guy the other day. He bought this big 40-pound thing of rice, and he says, "Why do you want to do that? Because now you got to keep the bugs and the moisture and everything and the oxygen away from the rice, and you're going to store one big thing of it. That's not smart. Store it in smaller quantities that you're actually going to eat, or that you could use as a bartering tool. I have 1 pound of rice. You have 1 pound of beans. Let's trade. That kind of thing. So that it's all."
So are you going to
sealed
do that?
up, and that's actually on our list on Amazon. We have a list on Amazon. What we do, guys, just to let you know, is when we buy as much stuff on our credit card as we can, of course, pay it off as you can, and then we have a credit card that builds up points, and from those points we can buy an Amazon gift card. Well, then we use our Amazon gift card to buy our emergency stuff, so we don't have to buy the emergency stuff.
Yeah.
We just gift it to ourselves. So we have a vacuum sealer on that list.
Nice.
Yep. So great thing to have. All right. So the recipe ingredients, that's what you want to do. Herbs and spices too, because you know what? You don't have to eat bland.
Eating those powdered eggs and powdered kale
Right.
day after day, you're going to want to switch up the variety of spices and stuff. And not only that, herbs and spices are nutrient-dense foods. I mean, my gosh, what did pepper used to be worth way back in the day? I mean, there's a reason why it's worth something, is because there's nutrients and
healing
and
powers in
healing
these things.
powers in herbs and spices. So again, collect them and also grow them and dehydrate them.
Right. And now to Jody's point earlier, she said intermittent fasting. So get used to doing long story short. So what we do is stop eating at 8 p.m. Again, like Jody said, start eating at 11 or noon, and then you can satiate yourself with fat in between, because if you think about it, your body's burning fat all night long. If you introduce fat in the morning instead of carbohydrates, you're not really breaking that fasting mechanism. You're keeping on going. So your body will go through that fat that you eat. And then what happens is now it's looking for fat to burn. It'll rely on your own fat, and therefore you can wait longer to eat. And so everybody has enough fat to survive on it, even if you're a really skinny person. And in fact, you'll probably do better than someone who's larger, because toxins are also stored in the fat. So if you are a much larger person, that actually might make you sick, because if your body's going to feed on all that fat, guess what? Well, it's got to melt the fat, and where's the fat going to go? Into your bloodstream. Well, if your body's been hanging on to those toxins in your fat, that's all going to get released into the bloodstream, and you're not going to feel very good. So get healthy now. Learn about intermittent fasting, and there's a really easy way to do that, Jody. Talk to us, okay, right here. In fact, you can talk to me for 30 minutes for free. Go to lairdwellness.com/blueprint. We have a whole program. You've heard us talk about it, 6 weeks or 12 weeks. And we can teach you all you need to know about getting healthy and staying healthy, and actually preparing you for this kind of stuff too. And if you just want to get started with just the blood test that we use in that program, you can just go here. Yeah. And in fact, we have a whole table, our living room, or our kitchen table.
Our dining room table isn't for dining anymore.
No, it's for business stuff with Laird Wellness. We got papers all over it. And part of those papers, we have 6, 7, I think about 8 papers over there now, with people who are doing this blood test. They're going to get their blood tested. They want to know what they're up against so they can start correcting things now. We give you a 1-hour consultation. Maybe that's all you need. You need to get your blood tested. I'll give you a whole hour conversation about here's what's going on. Here's what you need to do. If you can take it from there, great. If not, you can use that toward the Blueprint program. So we'll say, hey, you spent that much on the test already. We'll just take it off the Blueprint program and away we go. And we can teach you for 6 or 12 weeks. Yeah. And one of our lights just went off. I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, power's starting to go.
Get the generator.
Rolling blackouts. Okay. Anyway, so that is what that's all about. And actually, there are 2 different types of tests you can do, by the way. I'm going to show you that again. There's 55 biomarkers, which is a general overall health test that no doctors are going to do. I can guarantee you this is unlike anything you've ever seen. And the other option is to do 55 biomarkers plus 9 other markers that tell you your spike protein risk. Whether you've had COVID, whether you've gotten the jab, whether you're concerned about what either one of those things would do to you, or you're not even sure if you had it or not, you just want to make sure. You can do that test as well.
Yeah, it's basically a deeper dive look at your blood and the stickiness of your blood, basically. So obviously, if your blood is sticky and heavy, you're going to have more clotting risks.
Right.
So, whether you've gotten it and you want to see what your blood looks like now, or you're thinking about getting it, say you're going to travel this summer, you may want to take a look at that before you decide what you're going to do.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys, there you go. Thank you for your time and attention, and sorry for the late start, but hey, we got it done. We see lots of folks watching, so wonderful. If you have any other questions, please go to info@lairdwellness.com. We would be happy to let you know. And yes, Jody.
Also, my Instagram got hacked this week, so please don't accept anything from me, and it is miserable, and there's evil people in the world.
Yes.
15
years of pictures
of me putting up pictures of our family and our life, and they're gone.
Yep. So
Just gone.
if you see Jody's picture and it's Fishwear, Fshwear, that's an old company we used to own in Canada, so we use it quite often as an acronym. Don't trust it, okay? Block it. Okay, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.